in this screencast, I am going to go over design instead of just Ruby on Rails this time. I'm going to focus on CSS, SCSS, and then we'll be using the bourbon mixin library and neat responsive grid, and we'll be able to make a nice responsive landing page. And this is what it'll look like. We'll add a little bit of JavaScript in too to give it this nice fade out. Looks pretty cool. But the main thing is it will also be responsive. So you see there, and then we get a new menu. So let's get started with that. I am already in my directory that I want to be in. So I'm gonna make a new Rails project because this is the easiest way for me to be using SCSS and Bourbon. Do Rails new, and we'll call it zoom out, and then I'm going to call it the final one. You can call it whatever you want. All right, now I'm going to cd into that directory. All right, we got that. And I'm going to open up another one because we're going to need a Rails server to see what we're working on. All right, well, now that we have that Rails project up and running, I'm going to open it up in my text editor. All right, first things first, I'm going to hop into my gem file. And I'm just going to copy and paste this in. So mainly it looks pretty ugly, but the main things I added are right here under design. And I'm going to put this all on GitHub so you can just copy and paste it. But we've got here, we've got bourbon, neat. Actually, we don't need refills. And normalize Rails just to help out a little. So save that. First things first, I'm actually going to do, I'm going to start a Git repository. All right, we got that all set up. So now we need to get some of the base SCSS files all set up. So I'll show you what I do for that. So for these, for the JavaScript, I'm going to use Modernizer, which detects, helps detect what browsers are being used and what rules can be used. Save this. So got that all saved. And then also I like to use this reset.scss, and it's just a base for all of your CSS. All right, we got that too. So the vendor files are ready. Up next will be, let's make sure we set this file up. got to require the modernizer. All right, we got that one up and running. And then next, I'm going to open up the application.css. And I'm actually going to rename this. I'm going to put a .scss at the end. So now we can use import. All right. So now I'm going to get rid of this line. But now let's import import normalize Rails reset from the vendor file and the bourbon gem and the neat gem. So we got those all set up now. We can exit out of that. Now let's first make something where we can actually put our root page, because this is basically just going to be a static website for now. So let's make one static controller. So we'll do Rails G controller static pages. All right, we got that going. So let's go to our routes, get rid of all this stuff. And we'll put the root page as static pages. We'll call that page root. All right, open up static pages controller. And we have it. And now the last thing we need is an actual HTML file. So I'm just going to put down some content right now. Hello. Save that. And we'll save this as root.html.drb. All right. Now that we have that all going, we can get our server running. So I'm going to do Rails S. I've already got another server running, so I'm going to open up a different port. All right. There we go. That is our root page, good to go. So for this, I'm just going to add in the HTML content right away, and then the rest of the screencast will focus on SCSS and JavaScript at the end. So let's put in that content first. So let's open up the root page. And I've just got a bunch of dummy content here. Save that. And then let's make a header file where the nav bar will be. We'll make this a partial. So we got that going. Now we need to go into application.html, and we need to render that header. Now let's check this out. There we go. Everything looking as beautiful as it can be. All right, now we can get started with setting up our basic partial SCSS files. So for that, I'm going to make a new directory. I'm going to call it partials. And then the first file I'm going to make is going to be called layout. Don't forget the underscore in front, but it's going to be called layout.scss. And inside this one, I am just going to copy and paste in what I normally use. These are kind of files I just always copy and paste in with pretty much all my projects. So basically right here, all it is the breakpoints to make it responsive. So we have variables up here, and this is iPhone size, iPad size, and then desktop right here. And we'll be able to just put in SM or L for whatever media query we want. And the way you'll do that is you'll say MQ, and then inside of the parentheses you'll say small, medium, or large. And that's basically what this mixin does right here. Just makes it a lot less text when you're declaring it. So we got that one going. Next up, we'll make some of our own mixins. So mixins partial.scss. And I'll copy and paste this one in too, but I'll go over it. So basically what this is doing is, so this calculate rem, this is for the text size, but this makes it so you're able to just put in, say 16 pixels, and it will read it, it will remember it as a rem. So then the font is then responsive. So it changes with the size, and it's using a percentage. And then this down here, this mixin center, this is going to be used for, well, I exited out of that. But basically, this will center your text that you want. So what we use this one for is on that top slideshow part. The title is centered from side to side and from top to bottom of that container. And I can go back to that once we actually use it. So we got that up and running. And the last one is variables. Copy and paste that one in too. So basically for this one, we've got all of our colors right here. So we can be more semantic with what we're calling. And then we've got our header heights. So this will be, the header will get smaller when you shrink it down. And we'll have two sizes. There's the medium and the small, but the medium will be used for desktops as well. And then we got the intro height, which is the part where the picture is. And we'll have different sizes for all of that we can just call. And then second to last is, this will be our primary font, which I actually have to put in from Google Fonts. But then the last one is the Z index. So then basically this says elements, and you declare elements, and then you would say comma, and you would say which Z index are you using. And this basically goes from 1 to 3, 3 being the most top layer, which is navigation. But let me open this up. And right under CRF tags, CSRF meta tags, we'll put this, this is just a Google Fonts for this font family. And be sure, if you're gonna launch to Heroku or anything, you have to change this to an S right here, else it won't show up. But for now, this will work perfectly fine. So we got that. Now we need to go to the application. We need to import some more. So now we've declared from our partials file variables, mixins, layouts, and then the last one is style. And we need to make that file, and that's where all of our custom code is going to go. So say style.scss. First, let's go over here and make sure we got no errors going on. All right, looks good. So now we can get started with the good stuff. So I'm just going to label the parts. But to start out, this is basically like the overall styles that will be implemented across the whole page. So I'll start out with the topmost part, which is HTML. We're basically saying HTML, all elements. That's what the asterisk means. And then we're going to say dash WebKit dash font smoothing It's a confusing word. All right, and then next will be Zilla-OSX. And basically what this is doing, this font smoothing, is usually words have hard pixel edges, so it'd be completely black, and this kind of grays it out, and it makes it makes the fonts just look better. All right, up next, we're gonna use border boxing or for boxing, which just basically makes the box model easier to deal with. If you don't know what it is, I would suggest Googling it and becoming a little bit more familiar with it. And this is our first bourbon mix-in. So we got that going. And basically that's being applied to all elements before and after and during. Next up, we'll set up the body. And we'll set up how the font's going to be. And this is, you can do this a different way too, but basically this is saying font, and there's normally a couple categories. You can do font-size, like font-size usually, instead of nesting it inside of here. But if you do this, and then you can nest just the word size. And then you can also use family, which is equal to font family, as you see pop up right there. We'll say primary font. And then let's set up the color. And it'll be color -3. And then we'll do the background color. We'll set that to background. And that's another color variable that we've already set up. And then the last part of this section, we'll say text decoration none. So no more underlines on these. There you go. No more underlines on here. We've got the background color, and we've got the font color for now. This will change a lot in a little bit. So the next part of this is basically setting up, this is where the grid framework we're using is set up. So we'll say .cd cd-content. I'll go over to the root page a little bit. Say at include outer dash container. And this is another part of bourbon neat mixins right here. I'm basically just saying it sets up the max width and whatnot. But let me go to the root page. And we're saying this should be 100% right here, this content. Let me actually go to so if I go to examples, you see here we've got include outer container, and then inside of it we can it's a 12 column feature. So by saying include outer container, we're making this container 100%. So this would go all the way to here, and then next we can set up how many columns we want it to span out of 12. And we can also say where is it? Down here, if we want to center something, we can say include shift, and that will center the item. So that's what we're going to do now. Because this next part is nested. This container is nested inside of the content. So we're going to span 10 out of 12 columns. And then we're going to shift one column. So then there's one column on the left and one column on the right that are open, centering it. So now if we look over here, we've got a centered body part right here. And responsive and everything. All right, now we're going to get into the main stuff, and I'm going to label this main components. And the first part is probably the longest part, and that's making the responsive header. So let's do that. So .cd-header, and let's first actually let's look at this. So we're doing the outside part, which will be the background of the header and just the whole main nav bar. And then inside of here, inside this nav, and then this will be what turns into from text on that nav bar to a drop-down menu when it's mobile. And the way this also works is, so the way this these mixins work, or actually layout right here. So basically everything we do first is small. It's built for mobile first. So anything that's not inside of MediaQuery is what will be seen on the smallest possible device. So the nav bar will be fixed. Let's make sure it's nice and snug. And it's going to span across the whole top. Set the height. And that's the small header height. quick. There's our nav bar right there. As you can see, we're not dealing with any of the links right now. And then we'll put a little box shadow on it. All right, we got that, and then we'll do the Z index. And you just play it off like this. You see elements, and this is from our mixin. We'll say navigation. And what this will end up being on underneath the CD header, if you inspected it, it would say Z index 3. So this basically makes 3, but this is much more semantic, and you know what it's for. All right, we got that all set up. I don't think it should have changed much. There you go. All right, next we're gonna do, and if you haven't worked with SCSS before, it's nice. You can nest things inside of it just like you would with HTML. So this one will say cd-logo. We're gonna float it to the left. Give it a nice margin, center it on that nav bar. And then we're going to change the color of it. Change it to white. And we'll make it a little bit bigger, 1.5 times the normal. So we got that. Let's take a look at it. Yep, there you go. That's what it did to the logo right there. Looking nice and centered. So you'll see the nav bar right now is meant for a smartphone size. So let's add a MediaQuery to make it so when it's at its bigger size. So that's all you do when you want to do MediaQuery is include MediaQuery and then the medium size. So it's basically saying if the browser is bigger than this amount of pixels, these rules will override these rules for whichever ones you do call on. So this is header-height -medium. I'll do hashtag CD logo. And we'll give it a, change the margin a little bit. All right, now if we look at it, you'll see that it gets bigger. All right, now we see it. When it gets down, there you go, right there. It goes from small to medium size. All right, now that we're done with the main nav background and what it does when it's responsive, we can get into making the dropdown and the links. So .cd-main and we're going to float all of these links to the right. So all of these will be floated to the right. We'll do margin right will be 5%. We'll do the height will be 100%. And then I'm setting up the background, and this is going to put in that little the 3 tick marks that represent a menu you can click, and we'll put those files in a little bit, but I'm just gonna, I know the name of it, so I'll do that. And if you need those will be on GitHub as well. We'll say no repeat. We want it centered. And it's that background will be 44 pixels by 44 pixels. I want to make sure it has a cursor, a pointer, so they know they can click on it. Look at this, and everything's floated to the right, but we're missing that picture. So if you actually go to my GitHub, you'll be able to go get it right now. I'm just going to copy it in right now, though. All right, did that. There you go. And we've got no, and that'll be disappearing in a little bit. All right, now let's get into the list. And this is, we're designing it for what it's going to look like when it's a drop down. So this part of it is designing, here, let me go to it. So right now we're designing it for when it's this size. So we're designing this part. So let's do that. We gotta position it absolutely. That will do padding left will be 0, margin top 0. And this is what we're gonna make it be able to translate as well. And this is gonna, if it wasn't in an absolute position, we wouldn't be able to hide it. We wouldn't be able to click the button and have it pop in and out. Want the width to span the whole thing, and then right here, this is another bourbon mixin. And then we want this to translate on the y-axis to -100%. And we're going to need a little bit of JavaScript to implement this, but basically what this is doing is this is allowing us to, when it's like this, when you click the button, and it'll transform -100% on the y-axis, so it'll all disappear to up here so you can't see it. And then when you press it again, it'll all appear so you can see it. So we've got that, and then we have to have, this is what will be done through JavaScript. We'll say in JavaScript we'll say when's clicked, add class is visible. And this ampersand basically just says, it just makes it so it goes UL and then is visible as like a combined class. Translate Y, and since this can be done in both we'll say since this is going to be for the smallest device right now, we'll say the height of that container, its header height is for small. And then next we'll get on to the links, but let's first see where we're at. All right, now you can see that those all disappeared. We can't click anything right now because we don't have the JavaScript implemented. So it's doing a good job of hiding it. And we don't have a bigger MediaQuery, so we don't see it when we expand it either. But we're gonna get to that right now. First, we're going to get the color of the links that are inside of that block. Say display block, do the height, do the line height. This is just getting all the text looking nice. Like inside here, centering it and whatnot in here. All right, and then we'll do padding left. We'll keep it at 5% again. We'll do background, actually just background. And we'll set that background to the background color. And we'll have a border on top, and this will basically split all of the links. We'll say 1 pix, solid. And we could say lighten. This is basically just saying lighten the background color. It's going to change the hex value by a little bit to lighten it, so there's a difference. And I'll say the color of the links will be white. And we can't see it right now. But right now, let's make the MediaQuery for when it's at when it's bigger than the medium. So when it's bigger than iPad. So we set up that MediaQuery. And let's set up the width we need for just the normal layout. This is desktop. We don't need a background because we already set up our background as that teal color. So we want to make sure we override that. And the cursor, we'll say auto, should know what to do. All right, now let's style the unordered list part. And then this is another bourbon mixin. And we're saying there's no translation that's going to be going on right here. It's just going to stay the same. We're going to make sure we're not doing a pop-up or pop-down menu. All right, and then we got to add that class to override, which is .isVisible. We'll say include transform translate y 0. All right, now let's get into the list part of it. And we're going to need this to be, we're going to need the display to be inline block, so they're all next to each other, like normal writing. And then we'll say margin left is 1em. So let's refresh this. So when we get bigger, yep, there it is. You can see that it goes from the drop-down menu option to normal. But now we got to get rid of, we got to style the links, get rid of those backgrounds. So display will be inline block. And we're getting rid of that blue background, so we'll make it transparent. Then we'll set up the padding to get them looking nice and spaced out. So 0.6em and 1em. And then we need no more border on top. So no more border on top. And then this is that mixin we made earlier, where I can say font size. I can say 13 pixels, and it'll change that to ems or rems. And then we're going to make them all uppercase. So, oh, looks like we still got some borders going on somewhere. Let's look at this. Got border top none. Need to get rid of that. How about I just say border none? And that seems to have worked. All right, now we will be going on to the intro section, and this is where this whole this is where all the action happens. So right now we're going to style what the transition is going to look like, basically this fading away in opacity, and we'll set that in JavaScript too. And we'll put this, we'll center this right here and get the background image in there. And then last but not least, we will finish off with the main body section. So let's get into that. So here we're going to be calling an ID of CD intro. Position relative, height, and we'll set it at its small height that we have in our variables. All right, and then margin top, we'll set to the same. And then our Z index will be index elements intro image. All right, and now let's get the background going. So we'll set the height will be 100%. Same with the width. And then this is where we set our background URL. And I have it saved as ocean coast.jpg. Then on this one as well, we're going to want no repeat, and we're going to want it centered. And then after that, we're going to want the background size we're going to want to show as much of it as possible without distorting it. So there might be some parts of it cropped off, but it'll be the most optimized it can be. And then we'll set a little box shadow at the bottom of it. Can check that out. All right, looking a little funky right now. We still got some styling to do to it. So let's get going. All right. Let's do the tagline next, which is where it will say zoom out. We'll have the position be absolute, and this is so we can use that center mixin we made. But we're gonna set, instead of using a neat right now, I'm just gonna keep it easy and use width. Then I'll set the max width to large. Then we'll include center. So now if you look at it, where is it? That's why we're still designing for smartphone right now, so it's not going to look right yet. So we've got that in there, but we need to style the H1 part of it as well. And that will do the text align. We'll want that centered. And the color will be white. And the text shadow . Zero, 2 pixels, 6 pixels. All right, that's done styling for the small devices. All right, now you can see where the centered is. Just needed a little bit in the H1, but now let's optimize it for the medium and large size screens. So let's include our MediaQuery. And then we'll say height. We'll do intro dash height medium. We'll do the margin top the same. No, not the same. It's going to be header height dash medium. And then we'll do the H1 as well. We'll change the font size when it's a little bit bigger. We'll make the font size a little bit bigger as well. All right, that does it for the medium size. So let's see how that changes it. All right, now you can see it's actually brushed up with the top now. So let's make it for the large as well, because in this part we're going to put our transition CSS that we'll use with JavaScript. So that's what this part is. So we're saying position, fixed, and we'll say top, header medium, left 0, we want the height at the intro height large. Margin top 0, we want it nice and flushed up to that. And then last part is the H1. And we'll bump up the font size again to 32 pixels. All right, let's take a look at this now. All right, so since this is since we did the position is fixed, this will stay here. Give it that kind of like parallax zoom out feel. So right now it's fixed and it's overlapping the normal content. So we have to expose the content. But if we go smaller, then you see we've got the content back and we can scroll again. But let's get our content back right here. So we'll do .cd-content. Position will be relative. Padding to M0. And we're setting the font color to color 3. And the background color will be a nice tan. And we got to set up the z-index because this one will have priority over the image section because it's going to scroll over it. All right, we got that. Now we're going to use some pseudo selectors. And we'll say CD content before CD content is what we're saying right here. We're going to give it a subtle gradient. And we're just creating a little blank space there. So then we can make a little bit of a box. Keep the width. Oops. Width will still be at 100%. Our height, 50 pixels. So let's check out what we got right now. All right, yep, you see it's on top, but now we need to make sure it's we'll get to that in the MediaQuery at the bottom, and we'll make sure that it's pushed down the intro part worth of height. But first, let's include a linear gradient. And this is a bourbon mixin as well. And if you want to see any bourbon mix-ins and learn more about them, just go here, go to the docs, and you can see examples of them all. And then this next part, we're going to see if we can actually use that gradient with certain browsers. And this is where Modernizer comes in. And if it doesn't work, we'll just display nothing. All right. Then this will be the part that says this is the title in the gray area. We'll set the font size to 20 pixels. then the text will be 1M. All right, that's done with the small size. It's all looking really funky. It's getting there. Got to fix that top part. So we'll do the media query for medium. And what we'll change is the line height. Will be 1.8. And the header will be we'll have that at 30 pics. And then lastly, we'll use the big media query. Oh, that says medium. Let's do intro height. So this is going to get rid of that, this should get rid of all that, that weird stuff going up on top right now, all of this. See if that does it. All right, yep, that does it right there. Already looking good. And then we just gotta do what the size will be for paragraph font size. All right, now that we do that, it's all good. So everything is working except we just need a, oh, what's going on there? Up here I found my mistake in, there's a blue part up here before. Basically, if you go right here to see the intro, before I had intro here when it needed to be header. So if you change it to header.height.s, it's all working. So now with that done, all the CSS is done. And it looks pretty good just by itself like this. But we need to be able to open this menu and add that zoom out look. So let's do that. And for this one, I'm just going to write everything in application.js, even though it's probably not the best practice, but it's a very small amount that I'm putting in here. So let's write some jQuery. So we'll get our document ready. Function, jQuery. All right, let's set up our variables. We'll have the first one called intro section. And then we'll have the intro section will be the intro part, intro ID. And then we're going to also do next variable will be intro section height, and that's going to equal intro section dot height. And we're basically setting up our scaling and opacity values here. So we'll have our scale value here. This is the speed that it's going to scale at. You can change this to whatever you want. We'll have it at 0.3. Then we're going to have the opacity value equal 1. And those are our vars right there. Our variables are all set up. Actually, there's one more, which would be var. This is the MediaQuery, because this whole effect is only going to work on the desktop version, which is 1170 pixels. So to enforce that, we've got this next part where we're going to make a function called trigger animation. And in trigger animation, we're going to make sure the current viewport is bigger than the MediaQuery. If it's not, we're not gonna do any of this. So in order to do that, we're gonna have to call trigger animation, call that function, and then we're also gonna have to say, oops, need parentheses, and we'll say window dot on resize, and then we'll call the trigger animation function. So we're saying basically when you resize, we're listening to trigger animation. We're going to check that that if-else statement in trigger animation. All right, so let's make trigger animation. So, got that function set up. So this is the part where we say if the window width is greater than or equal to the MediaQuery number, we will we're going to call another method called animate intro, and this will do all the opacity and scaling stuff. So window.on, we're listening for scroll event. Then we'll say window and this we're calling animate intro. But if the MediaQuery is not the right size, we will say don't listen. All right, now we'll get into the last part, which is the animate intro. So we're saying animate intro. And we gotta set up the percentage that it's going to change as we're scrolling. So we'll do that. And we got to make sure that we're taking that number and we're going to put it to a string with 2 fixed. And we'll do the scale value. And this is basically the scale value right here is what makes it zoom towards you or away. So if you did 1 plus scroll percentage times scale speed. So we're doing minus, and this makes it look like it's going away. And if we did plus, it would look like it's coming towards you as you scroll down. And the last part is, say, window dot scroll top. If that's smaller than intro section height, then we're gonna give it that the CSS transform stuff, and it will transform it by the scale value that we have above right here. So we got to set that up for multiple browsers. Say intro section dot CSS. And for this, we'll do for the sake of speed and repeating myself. So basically, this is just doing the transform in CSS, and it's saying put the scale at this scale value, which is changing as you scroll right here, which is calculated right here. And it's doing it for with all the vendor prefixes. And then also we want to change the opacity as it floats away. And this will get a heavier and heavier opacity as you scroll. So with that set up, we should move on. Let's see if it's working though. We'll fix that in a second. I'm just gonna finish this off with the open and close of the menu. So we'll say .cd-main nav we'll say on click we'll do this function. if our target missing that. So then we'll say this. Oh, I need parentheses. We'll say the children should be shown. But we'll say, and then we'll toggle the class of is visible, which we set up in our CSS before. So once it's clicked, we're saying add the class is visible, and it will show all of the unordered list that is there. So this part should work. Hopefully. Oh, not working right now. Alright, so I found the errors I made, and the first one was I forgot to put speed at the end of opacity, so that's why the whole effect wasn't working. And then the menu wasn't working because I forgot to put toggle, I forgot to put class right here at the end of toggle. So if you do that and make sure you have a parenthesis at the end right here, everything should be working now. So if I refresh, I got a menu that's working, this works, but if I go desktop size, there you go. You get the whole scaling and opacity. And that will do it for this screencast. Thank you for watching.